made up of oaks, bays, madrones, and other species, and conifer forests that consist of Douglas fir, several species of pine, and other trees cover large areas of Northern California. Hardwoods resprout following fires when their trunk, branches, and leaves all burn. Due to the suppression of fire for over 100 years in most areas, conifers such as Douglas fir have expanded into oak woodlands. Douglas fir cannot withstand high-intensity fire and will die after most of the crown is burned. Having Douglas fir invade oak woodland due to fire suppression has resulted in greater destruction of oaks. This is an example of an ecological consequence of fire suppression.
When the fires are up into the tops of the trees and they carry from top of tree to top of tree throughout the forest, and that's what's called canopy or crown fires. And those are the really big, impressive flame lengths and fire scenes that we see in the big campaign fires. French broom is very volatile. I wouldn't say exactly like chaparral, but kind of in a similar type of fuel with some volatile oils in there that makes for rapid burning. Our concern a lot of times with French broom is it is not a native species, and so it does take over. And what we'll see is after a fire or when a stand is allowed to grow, then you've got a big stand of French broom, and then those stands will carry fire much more rapidly and much more intensely.
As far as conifers, there are a lot of factors that influence the fire intensity and spread. In general, fires in conifer forests can prepare the seed bed and provide for nutrient cycling, change the age classes and vegetation types in some forests depending on the fire intensity, and also create and exterminate some hazards. Past land management practices have increased accumulations of biomass, and biomass can affect the rate and the intensity of fire spread both in fine fuels and larger fuels. And the buildup of those types of fuels generally can lead to large conflagrations if they're not managed. Typically, reduced fuel loads will be managed through forest thinning operations, prescribed fire, and other practices. In California, we have a Mediterranean fire-prone climate. Many of our oaks are adapted to fire, and they vigorously resprout after fire. In fact, many can appear dead, but they will oftentimes sprout from the roots and the basal root. Landowners using private funds do not require a permit to treat their vegetation. If they're seeking funding through a grant program or other public money, then the CEQA process is required, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, to address any potential impacts to that project. Generally, the landowners will just hire forest labor crews or maybe some mechanical equipment or burn boss in order to treat their fuels. It's highly recommended that you talk to a resource professional when starting any type of major landscape project or post-fire cleanup. It can really help guide you with the type of work that you should focus on, the type of equipment that may be used, help you with the project budget and the timing, and really give you an idea of what you can expect post-treatment. The easiest method is to hire a professional contractor to do the work. Of course, that can be expensive. The hand labor crews typically will range from approximately $3,000 a day and can cover 1 to 3 acres depending on the terrain and vegetation conditions. Mechanical equipment such as a masticator that can operate on slopes up to 30% and next to roads, those types of equipment cost about $3,000 a day. A masticator can also cover approximately 1 to 2 acres per day. Generally, the tree densities would be much lower in a natural fire regime, and that would occur through frequent low-intensity fires, removing the understory fuels in the small trees, leaving large trees well-spaced with not much fuel in between or in the lower canopy.
You see the pictures of a healthy forest versus a forest that's a little more heavily congested. From a fire suppression standpoint alone, which is where most of my experience is, I am not a forester. I tell people the rule of thumb is you shouldn't have trees touching each other. That lends itself to that crown fire type of expansion and growth. If you don't have them touching, like in some of the healthy forest models you see where the trees are spaced out, you won't have as much probability a running crown fire because you won't have that contiguous fuel model of the trees so densely touching each other where they're intertwined amongst themselves.
There were very few houses up in the hills in 1964. So the Hanley fire, 100 homes burned, so it was not nearly as catastrophic as the 2017 fires here that burned 5,000 structures at least. Some of these places have burned as many as 7 times in the last 150 years. We still don't have that consciousness. The darker the blue, the more times those locations have burned. There's places they're going to burn again, and maybe it's okay for some people to build in those places with that understanding and taking special precautions, but in general, it just doesn't seem like a very good idea.
Fire suppression has led to thick, overgrown forests in much of Northern California. If you are a forest landowner, it's very important that you manage your forest to reduce the overall fuel load by taking out small trees, understory bushes and plants, taking out ladder fuels. You can do this in a number of different ways by using hand crews, various types of equipment like masticators, or prescribed burning. We'd like to acknowledge the agencies that provided the funding for these videos: the California Department of Food and Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. If you would like to learn more on these subjects, please visit our website.